On today's show, the Nets battle but fall to the Thunder for their second straight loss out of the All-Star break. This loss was an improvement from Thursday, but the Nets' offense remained abysmal. I'll tell you why that's unlikely to improve significantly during the rest of the season on today's episode of Locked On Nets.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Nets, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Now the number one sports podcast network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. I'm Erik Slater, Brooklyn Nets beat reporter for ClutchPoints.com. Thank you for making me your first listen of the day. This show is 100% free on all those great platforms. And on today's bonus episode, I'm going to be recapping Brooklyn's 105-86 loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder on Friday at Paycom Center. And this was the Nets' second straight loss coming out of the All-Star break, back-to-back losses. And while the score was ugly in the end, this game I felt was a significant improvement from Thursday, as much of an improvement as you can have, during a 19-point loss. But the Nets played significantly harder in this game than they played against the Cavaliers, which was also a blowout loss. And they came out extremely flat and uninterested during that game against the Cavaliers. And this one tonight, they actually led the Thunder, who were missing Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams. They led them 23-21 at the end of the first quarter, and they were battling, but ultimately the offense was just completely brutal, and it did not allow the Nets to compete or at least have a significant chance or real chance of winning as this game progressed. Because I said they were leading 23-21 at the end of the first quarter. The Nets end up scoring 33 points at the end of the half. They scored 10 points on 3 of 17 shooting in the second quarter. That was tied for the fewest points in a quarter this season. And for the game, the Nets, they battled. They were up at the end of the first, and they fell behind by a significant amount in the third quarter. But then we're actually able to battle back to cut it to 8 at one point. But then their offense, it was just not enough to allow them to get over the hump. And I said, really just abysmal effort offensively. And for the game, they were 29 of 79. That's 37% from the field, and 7 of 41 from three, 17%. With 20 turnovers. This was their worst three-point shooting game of the season. And it really starts from the top down, because you look at it, the guys that the Nets had been relying on when they were playing well, like when the Nets had that 7-3 stretch during December, obviously it was the defense fueling things, but they got contributions, steady contributions from their top guys like Michael Porter Jr., Noah Clowney, sometimes Yegor Dioma. You look at it tonight, MPJ finishes with 22 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 turnovers, 6 of 16 from the field, and 1 of 9 from 3. Obviously, not the best stat line efficiency-wise. I think MPJ did play hard for most of the game. And then you look at Noah Clowney. He had 8 points, 5 rebounds, 3 of 9 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3. Yegor Dioma also struggled in a big way. I'm going to get to the rookies after this, but focusing on MPJ and Clowney, those were two guys, when the Nets had that hot streak in December, were playing well offensively on a near nightly basis, and we're giving them steady contributions and giving their offense a floor. And, you look at it, MPJ has cooled off pretty significantly as of late. Over his last 11 games, he's at 21.5 points, but he's shooting 42% from the field and 29% from three. So outside of a couple really big performances, he has cooled off. And look, that shouldn't be all that surprising. I mean, you look at what MPJ was doing earlier in the season. He was converting on a ridiculous shot diet, hitting a lot of really tough shots, but then he was also getting some easier looks within the flow of the offense, coming off of pin downs, slipping pin downs, getting high-low dump-offs, getting layups, backdoor cuts, like easy stuff like that. Some of that stuff has started to get phased out somewhat as defenses get more film on him. So those easy buckets aren't coming as much. And then, you're going to expect some regression when you're taking as tough of a shot diet as MPJ has been for most of the season. It's not surprising to see him regressing, especially from three, given the level of difficulty of some of those shots. So that's a little bit more understandable to me. But then you talk about a guy like Noah Clowney. Noah has cooled off in a big way after that stretch in November and early December where he looked really hot, and it looked like he might have been breaking out and turning a corner. You look at it, over Noah's last 25 games, he's shooting 43 of 156 from three. That's 27.6%. So that 3-point regression has really mitigated his impact over these last 25 games. He's around like a -9 net rating. So he's been struggling. Like the 2-point efficiency has remained decent. I think he's over 50%, which is a steady improvement from last year. He's still trying to get downhill, but overall, like the 3-point limitations, it's something that is becoming concerning for Noah, because you look at it, I said like MPJ, that's somewhat to be expected. There's only so much that he can do, but you look at Noah, he's now down below 32% from three for the season. And this is now, you go back to his last year of college, his G League games during his rookie year, all of his NBA games, across that whole sample size, he's below 32% from three. And that's like a 4-year sample size. So, he's still a young player. He's 21 years old. He's shown shooting flashes for extended periods that were really encouraging. But at a certain point, like the, sample size just becomes big enough where you say, is this like the norm? Is this what he's going to be? And if Noah's shooting below 32% or he's like a low 30s shooter, I just don't know how impactful he's going to ultimately be able to be as a player, because he obviously, even though he's improved as a driver, as a 2-point shooter, some of those things, he does have those limitations. So the 3-point shooting for Noah, it's somewhat concerning, and you hope that it can turn a corner. But it's also just tough in the Nets, because with MPJ starting to slow down, starting to run out of gas a little bit, the shooting regression starting to hit with him, and same thing with Noah. Outside of that, you're really relying on rookies, because you don't really have another offensive guy who is, doing much to, either from a 3-point shooting perspective or from like a lead ball handling perspective. You're just not having that guy on the Nets right now. So it's mostly the rookies. And you look at the rookies tonight, the only one who I would say had a positive impact was Nolan Traore, and he finishes with 17 points, 3 assists, 4 turnovers, 5 of 11 from the field, and 1 of 4 from three. So not the best stat line, like 3 assists, 4 turnovers. You got to clean that up. But 17 points on 11 shots against an OKC team that obviously is missing SGA and Jalen Williams, but they still have some good defenders at the point of attack. I mean, you have guys like Kason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, hounding Nolan Traore. And I think that he held up pretty well for the most part. Like, you did see some nice flashes. Obviously, like, Nolan is able to get downhill. He just does it time and time again. The challenge for him is obviously making those efficient reads, playing with more pace, kind of, going from fast to slow, slow to fast when you get into the lane, and then finishing at the rim and in the mid-range. And I think that we saw some encouraging flashes of that from Nolan tonight. He got to the free throw line also with 6 of 6 from the free throw line, but you had some plays where he's, being guarded by a guy like Kason Wallace with Isaiah Hartenstein in drop coverage, and he's able to probe and kind of hit a floater. We saw a couple plays where he attacked Isaiah Hartenstein at the rim and was able to finish over him. So overall, I think it was a positive performance from Nolan. But then you look at the other rookies, Yegor Dioman, really rough game from Yegor. He finishes with 3 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 0 turnovers, but 1 of 10 from the field and 1 of 8 from three. And this has kind of been the story with Yegor. Like, the nights where he doesn't have it going from three and he's really struggling, his impact is not non-existent, but it's very, very mitigated. And I just think with Yegor, at some point you need to try to get something going downhill. Like, we know the 3-point shooting has been his calling card. We know that's been, overwhelmingly the thing that has provided his impact this season. But when you don't have it going from three, at some point you need to try to press the issue. You need to try to get downhill. And it seems like Yegor has it in his head so much that 3-point shot, that's what he's the most comfortable with. That's where his impact has come from. And sometimes it just seems like chucking. And that was the case tonight. He had some really bad misses, but there are just some times where, like, Yegor gets a screen at the top of the key and he's turning the corner and he has space in front of him and he sees that drop coverage and he almost always tries to take that pull-up three, or he stops and looks to pass out of it. And at a certain point, when you see that drop coverage and you have space, just go. I understand that, he's not the most comfortable driving to the basket, operating in the mid-range, trying to play in the paint. Hopefully all that stuff will get better as he adds some size and adds some weight. But at a certain point, you got to press the issue. And I'm sure the Nets coaching staff are in Yegor's ear telling him that. They were early in the season. It's really tough during a season when you don't have that much time to work on your skills, and some of that stuff adds, size and weight. He's not going to be the most comfortable, but we've seen him do it in spurts. Like, I always go back to that Celtics game in Boston. That was one of Yegor's best game of the season. We saw during the first half of that game 3 drives where Yegor, pump faked, went downhill, turned the corner on his screen, went downhill, challenged guys at the rim, and finished up and over them. And is he going to be able to do that consistently? No. But I know that he can try it more than he has been in these last few games because I've seen him do it. So you're just going to want to see that adjustment and that improvement from Yegor. And the last rookie I'm going to talk about, Danny Wolf, finishes with 8 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 turnover, 4 of 12 from the field, and 0 of 5 from 3. And the three-point shooting has just continued to regress in a pretty big way. I mean, similar to Noah Clowney, Danny's now down to 31.5% from 3 for the season. And he started out really hot, over his first 5, 6, 7 games, something along those lines. But he's now 32 of 119 from 3 over his last 31 games. That's 27%. So that's concerning, especially when you couple it with the fact that Danny's shooting 47.5% at the rim. And that mark, 47.5% at the rim, that ranks 126th out of 130 centers and forwards who have played over 500 minutes this season. 126 out of 130. And that's center and forwards. That's from cleaning the glass. So if you brought that to guys who are, near 7-footers, like Danny is one of the worst, if not the worst, finishing at the rim. And look, he's a rookie. He's 21 years old. But at the same time, I've spoken about this. He's a below-the-rim guy. Like, he just struggles finishing at the rim when there's any sort of resistance or any sort of contest. And is that going to get better? Like, hopefully it can improve as you age, add a little bit more strength. But at the end of the day, like, if you're a grounded athlete, you're a grounded athlete. So I'm not sure how much that's going to improve with Danny at the rim. And if you say that, the jump shooting, you're going to need that to come along for him to improve offensively and for him to be, capable, palatable, and efficient offensively, because the rim scoring probably just isn't going to be there. Him shooting now, 27% from 3 over a 31-game sample, like, he obviously looks like he has a decent stroke. He shot well in spurts during college, but that's something that is going to need to come around. So we'll see how that plays out. But, the rookies, Nolan Schroeder, I think, had a positive game tonight. But outside of that, Danny and Yegor struggled. And then Drake Powell didn't really even do much, so I'm not going to talk about him. But I do think that there were some other significant takeaways from this game. One of them being that MPJ and Yegor played in a back-to-back for the first time in over 2 months. Also, the Nets come away with a loss, and that is pretty significant because there were some other notable outcomes in regard to the tank race. So what's happening with all that? What should Nets fans be looking for moving forward? I'll get into all that when I close out Locked On Nets after a quick break. Guys, ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock in. Futures, you'll love them this time of year, whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab a conference title. It adds an extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now not only can your pick cash, but it can also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way. And there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you can make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. Guys, I love how simple Quo makes everything. Your whole team can call and text from one shared business number, so nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal. It works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this a year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO.com/lockedonnba. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to make the top spot. Guys, 5-Hour Energy has a wide range of flavors, something for everyone. Guys, my top flavors, Tropical Burst. It's tasty and has a fruity flow that gives off island vibes. Sour Apple. It's crisp, has a tangy taste, and a delicious tart. Guys, I also love other flavors like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. All of those are great. So find your new flavor of 5-Hour Energy shots available online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon. Coming back from the break, closing out today's bonus Locked On Nets episode, talking about Brooklyn's loss to the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I just went through all the performances. I went through the Nets' offensive struggles. But the other thing that I think was really notable from this game was just the fact that MPJ and Yegor played on a back-to-back, because those guys had not played on a back-to-back in multiple months. MPJ hadn't played in a back-to-back since late November, Yegor since early December. So that's over 2 months, nearly 3 in MPJ's case, and neither of them had played in a back-to-back. And I wasn't sure if either of them were going to play in a back-to-back for the rest of the season. But I think that from the Nets' perspective, looking at this, you probably say, like, those guys didn't play that much on Thursday against the Cavs. They're coming out of the All-Star break. They have a break. And then you look at some of the games that the Nets have upcoming, it might be a little bit foreshadowing that the Nets are going to sit these guys potentially in the next game against Dallas. But you look at it like MPJ, Yegor, I said, they didn't play that much against Cleveland. I think MPJ played 20 minutes against Cleveland. Yegor played 26. But tonight, MPJ, first back-to-back in nearly 3 months. The Nets played him 38 minutes in this game tonight. Yegor played 28. So given that, I would not at all be surprised if the Nets have a plan to sit one, if not both of those guys, definitely MPJ during some upcoming games. Like, you look at the upcoming schedule, the Nets have the Hawks on Sunday, then they have the Mavericks on Tuesday, and that Dallas game is a game that I think MPJ is probably going to sit. Yegor maybe two, maybe one of those guys or both those guys sit against the Hawks on Sunday. But that game against Dallas, they're a team that's soft tanking right now. Cooper Flagg is sidelined. That's a game that could be winnable for the Nets if they have all their guys available. And MPJ playing in a back-to-back and playing 38 minutes tonight, I would not at all be surprised if he sat for multiple games. Definitely probably that Dallas game I would expect moving forward. But it is notable that MPJ and Yegor played in this back-to-back tonight, because I wasn't sure if they were going to play in a back-to-back for the rest of the season, because at a certain point, you go multiple months without playing a back-to-back. We know MPJ obviously has been huge to the Nets' ability to compete, and he also is a guy that has significant injury concerns throughout his career. Yegor is coming off the plantar fascia tear, and both of those guys sitting back-to-backs had kind of been a vehicle for the Nets to tank. They had been sitting MPJ one leg and sitting Yegor the other leg, and you look at it in this one, you might say if you're the Nets, look, we played the Cavs on Thursday, the Thunder on Friday. Both of those games overwhelmingly likely to be losses. We can get away with playing both of those guys. But now you have some of these games coming up. I mean, the Hawks and the Mavericks, those are winnable games. So we'll see how they handle that, but I would not at all be surprised if MPJ and or Yegor are sitting out during at least one of those games. And then last thing on this episode, you talk about the draft lottery standings. The Nets are on the rise, because tonight the Washington Wizards beat the Pacers. They played the Pacers in back-to-back games, and the Wizards won both of those games, which honestly, impeccable tanking, actually impressive by the Pacers, that they were able to lose back-to-back games to the Wizards. And this has relevance to the Nets, obviously, because of the lottery standings, but also for the fact that much was made about Adam Silver and how he talked about the tanking throughout the league and him sending some warnings, or you could even say threats, to tanking teams during his press conferences during the All-Star break. And the Pacers took that, the Wizards also, but mainly the Pacers. The Pacers took that. They had been fined $100,000 for violating the player participation policy before the All-Star break. We know they sat all those guys out against the Nets. The Nets still managed to lose that game. But the Pacers went in these games, both of these games against the Wizards, and they sat out almost all of their contributors. And they said, Adam Silver, they took that $100,000 fine. They took the paperwork on that, and they wiped their rear ends with it. And they said, to hell with that. We're tanking. We don't give a flying F. And they tanked, and they lost back-to-back games to the Washington Wizards, which is huge for them. But you look at it for the Nets now. The Nets now hold sole possession of fourth place in the draft lottery standings. And that's the first time that they've had sole possession in the top four in a very long time. They now have a one-game lead over the Wizards, and they are now one game back of the Pacers and the Pelicans, who are tied for second, but they're tied in the loss column, the Nets in the win column, The Nets, the Pelicans, and the Pacers all have 15 wins, and the Pacers and the Pelicans have 2 more losses. So the Nets have a real opportunity to get up into that second spot in the draft lottery standings. And look, we know that the Pacers are going to be tanking really hard. They showed that in these last few games. They owe their pick top 4 protected to the Los Angeles Clippers. The Wizards are also going to be tanking really hard because they owe their pick top 8 protected to the New York Knicks. So the Nets are going to have their work cut out for them to remain ahead of either the Wizards or the Pacers, or get ahead of the Pacers or remain ahead of the Wizards. But they do have a really difficult upcoming schedule coming up, and they're just not playing well offensively right now. Like, their offense is just a huge inhibitor in their ability to compete. So I've said it. I think it's going to be the Nets, the Pacers, and the Wizards battling for those 2, 3, 4 spots, which, if the Nets can get into that 4 spot and stay there, that is a major win for them, I think. And if they can get up to 2 and you limit your floor to being 6, also a major win. But I think the Nets are going to be able to get ahead of the Pelicans, who they're 1 game behind, 2 in the loss column right now. But really, the Pelicans lost to the Bucks tonight. They got kind of blown out by the Bucks. What an embarrassing season for the New Orleans Pelicans, man. I mean, a team, you look at all these teams like the Kings, the Pacers, the Nets, the Wizards, the Jazz, all these teams that are desperately trying to tank, doing everything they can to stay at the bottom of the standings. The Pelicans don't even own their pick. They have no incentive to lose, and still they are ahead of the team or behind a team like the Nets or the Wizards in the standings. It's really just embarrassing. And that trade, I know like Derek Queen had his moments earlier in the season and, whatever with that, but that trade, man, with the Hawks was just an embarrassing trade. And if I were a Pelicans fan, I would want to almost disown the franchise for that trade, especially given all that you're hearing about the guys that top this draft right now, how franchise altering some of those guys can be. And you traded away that opportunity to get one of those guys, to get Derek Queen, who, look, fine player, but you already had a lottery pick in that draft before that. Just embarrassing. But ultimately, given the incentives, given the Pelicans incentives to win and try to not embarrass themselves completely, and all the incentive in the world the Nets have to lose, I am somewhat hopeful the Nets will be able to pass the Pelicans in the lottery standings. And at that point, it will be the Nets, the Pacers, the Wizards competing for those 2, 3, 4 spots. So we'll see how that shakes out. But that's all I got for you guys on today's bonus episode of Locked On Nets. If you guys do not already, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Nets on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, whether Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you enjoy my content, take a second right now, smash that like button, leave a comment, leave a 5-star review. Anything you can do to engage is much appreciated. The Nets got 1 day off. Then they're back in action against the Hawks on Sunday. So I'll have coverage of all that and more when I'm back on Monday talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.